Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I don't know when you're watching this, but I hope you're having a wonderful day.
And today we're talking about Chapter 11, Industry and Manufacturing.
So without further ado, let's get into it. Jumping right into Key Issue 1, where is industry located? Now there's basically two main points that we're going to be talking about, and that is the Industrial Revolution and industrial regions. Now the Industrial Revolution was a series of improvements in industrial technology that transformed the process of manufacturing goods.
The term is a bit misleading because it is far more than just industrial. It resulted in new social, economic, and political inventions. These changes involved a gradual diffusion of new ideas and techniques over decades rather than an instantaneous revolution.
Now, the Industrial Revolution started in the United Kingdom and not North America, which many people assume it did start, and it started there in the 1700s.
The first industries impacted were iron,
like the iron tool industry, which was the first to benefit of Watt's steam engine,
transportation,
like railroads,
and food processing,
which was canning foods in glass bottles sterilized in boiling water. And now we got the first part done. Now we're going to be going into part 2, industrial regions. So there's basically three main regions, or in this case continents, which we are going to address, and that is Europe, North America, and of course Asia.
And the first one is Europe, and the three major sites in that are United Kingdom, St. Petersburg, and Moscow, mostly because they dominated the industries in their areas.
Next, moving on to North America, we have New England, which dominated in cotton textiles. We have southwestern California, which had textiles and clothing production. And then we have southeastern Ontario, which was Canada's most important industrial region.
And last but not least, Asia, which includes Japan, China, and South Korea.
And that will conclude Key Issue 1. We will see you in Key Issue 2. Thank you.
Matt and Jeremy already talked about Key Issue 1, and now in Key Issue 2, why are situation and site factors important?
Key Issue 2 is all about situation and site factors relating to factories and their companies. Factories and the companies choose a location based on the cost of transportation of the materials and to get to the final good to the consumer. Bulk reducing industries greatly benefit from this. They have large amount of materials they need, which means a big transportation cost. Being close to the resources greatly reduces their costs. They must also ship it to their consumer, which they get close to so that the transportation cost is low.
Proximity to markets, the optimal location will be close to their consumers, and this is critical in three types of industries: bulk gaining, single market, and perishable products. Bulk gaining industries is when the product begins to weigh more through the processing. This is like steel products. Single market manufacturers are when the manufacturers only have one or two customers. Perishable products are products that must be close to the consumer, or else they would go bad, like bread or milk.
Many factories change their locations to lower the transportation costs for materials and to be close to their customers. This goes for major car makers like Ford and General Motors. They're located in North America to be closer to the consumer. They do get their parts, or some of their parts, from Japan because of lower labor costs. Companies also agglomerate close to each other to share resources and parts with each other. To conclude, many companies set up shop wherever they can operate most cheaply and gain more profit.
Site factors are for labor, capital, and land that are used in locations. A labor-intensive industry, which wages and other compensation are a high percentage of expenses. Capital is when a company would borrow money so that their company can expand more and become better. Land is also very important because of their proximity also, and so that they can be able to expand more.
Thank you.
And that was Key Issue 2.
Bryce and Matthew did a fantastic job of explaining Key Issue 2. Now moving on to Key Issue 3, which is about pollution. Global warming is the rising in temperatures around the world, and this is burning through our ozone layer. This is causing skin cancer, damaging plants, and is disrupting food chains. And local air pollution would be things such as carbon monoxide, hydrocarbons, which forms photochemical energy, and particulates. An example of particulates would be fumes from diesel trucks. Moving into solid waste pollution, 4 pounds of solid waste is generated per person daily in the United States. Sanitary landfills are the most common strategy for disposal of solid waste in the US. 1/2 of the country's solid waste is buried under the soil. And under the soil sometimes are hazardous wastes such as mercury and zinc, so they're usually heavy metals. And it's dangerous to bury them under the soil because it's bad for our environment. And moving into water pollution, there are point source pollution and there's non-point source pollution. Point source pollution is in an exact spot in a specific area, such as a lake or a river. And non-point source pollution would be in like an ocean where it just spreads throughout. And an example of non-point source pollution would be pesticides covering a plantation, and when it rains, the pesticides just spread and film into the ocean. And one more thing is municipal sewage, which is wastewater coming from tubs and toilets and sinks, and just the wastewater just spills right into the ocean. And our environment is becoming very unhealthy, especially for wildlife animals that live in the sea. And that's about it for me. Thank you for watching, and you'll be seeing Zachary Dodd in KSU 4. Thank you.
Hello, this is Zachary Dodd, interesting you in KSU 4, situation and site factors that have been changing in manufacturing and development. So there's been a big change in the development regions, whereas in northwestern Europe and northeastern United States, there has been a shift from the high manufacturing there. It has become a low manufacturing area, and manufacturing has been moving towards the central areas in these regions. In the northeastern part of the United States, they lost 6 million workers in manufacturing between 1950 and 2010. Although this number has been rising, manufacturers did move towards the southwest because there were more unemployed people there who were willing to work for lower wages. This led to the right to work laws, which basically mean that it is not required that you be part of the union to join a manufacturing job, which then happens that manufacturing jobs will cheat people out of their money over hard work. So this law, although it sounds good, it is not whatsoever a good law. In Europe, though, there's been a boost because the reason that they're moving out of these regions is because they're trying to fund money for industrial manufacturing businesses inside of poorer nations so that they can build money and build products and stuff like that so that they become much better and much more wealthier. This happens with the creation, number one, of the euro, which has been discussed in previous chapters, and this is just trying to unite Europe. The next point that I'll focus on is the emerging of industrial regions. In 1970, 1/2 of the industrial regions was in Europe and 1/3 was in North America. Now there's only 1/4 in each of those regions. This is because manufacturing businesses have been shared throughout the world because of supply and demand and population. If all the manufacturing businesses are in Europe or in the United States, then it costs them a lot of money to transport their product down to places like Northern Africa or Central Africa where the population is booming. What also happens from this is something known as New International Division of Labor. What happens is basically companies will have their assembly in one country where skilled laborers are, but then they'll put their parts manufacturers in countries where they can cheat people out of their money, where they will work hard, long hours and hard jobs for low pay. This is also known as outsourcing, with which they will basically hand the keys to the proverbial, if you'll bear with me, the proverbial car of manufacturing to this poor nation, so then this poor nation can work money off of it. So it's kind of like a win-lose situation. Although the best part of this is vertical integration, which basically one country controls all parts, which means there can be the formation of unions and there can be workers working on many different jobs, and they won't be cheated out of their money. There is also something known as mandiquilling, and I probably is slaughtering this word, but we'll call it mandiquilling for now. This happens between the US and Mexico, which basically happens is the US will send parts down to Mexico, and Mexico, what they'll do is they'll decrease the tax on trade if they're allowed to put the finished product back in the US for sale. What also comes from this is Fordist, which is in my next point, renewed attraction of traditional industrial regions. What happens is Fordist production, which was basically a bunch of workers, would go in and they'd mass produce a lot of things in the production and the industrial regions. But what has changed from that is nowadays we use skilled labor, which we use less people, pay them a higher wage to do the same amount of work. But the product, how fast it was produced, wasn't as much as it usually was. So they've been switching it back into the old ways because there's been a higher demand. So that's switching from Fordist production to post-Fordist production, which was using the skilled workers, back into Fordist production.
Thanks for tuning into our vlog.
I hope you guys enjoyed this recap of Chapter 11, Industry and Manufacturing.
Thanks for watching.
We'll see you guys later.